Welcome to RPG Ranked, the channel where all your favorite RPGs are ranked.
What's up, RPG nerds? Welcome back to the channel. I am Brighton Nelson, and if you enjoy RPGs, especially Live Alive, please like, subscribe, and check out other videos on the channel. Just so you guys know, one of my best friends over here, Trent, is playing Ni no Kuni Wrath the White Witch, my second favorite RPG of all time. This is his first RPG other than Pokemon, and I'm excited for him. Anyway, let's get right into this video. We're starting off by the arrows. By the way, my one and only warning, there will be some spoilers here just because there are so many characters. And yes, so click off right now or probably click off if you don't want spoilers. But anyway, let's get right in this video. So first I'm going to start off with the characters that you get in Oersted's final chapter, which are all of the Odio forms. I want to start with them because they're probably the most boring characters to rank. Even though they're awesome, they're all basically going to be in the same place for me, and I'd rather talk about these other characters for longer and not end the video with these guys. So I'm going to put all of them in B tier. So basically, a quick explanation of all the tiers. S plus are the really good final characters. S are the good final characters, but not like amazing. A are going to be characters that are really good and you basically need them to progress. B are going to be characters that you really want to be able to progress, but you don't necessarily need them. C are just like pretty good characters. They're not bad, they're just average. Like, they're in your party, they help you out, but they're nothing insane. D tier characters are basically trash, and F tier characters are the trashiest around. Alright, anyway, so this is B tier, all the Odio forms. The reason they're in B tier is because you don't necessarily need them to beat the game or beat any of the chapter. I mean, if you want to beat Oersted's final chapter, you have to have them, but you don't need them to actually beat the game. Oh wait, no, never mind. I ranked them in A because you need them to beat a chapter. That's basic. Never mind. Basically, if you need them to beat a chapter, they are going to be in A tier. Alright. Let's move on. Those guys are kind of boring. Let's move on to Pogo, who's going to be an S tier. I wouldn't say... So basically, S plus tier are going to be the people that I would use in my main party of 4, and S tier are the ones I wouldn't use. And I would not say Pogo makes the cut. He's a good tank character. He has some good abilities. He has some different weaknesses you can target, different, like, probably, like, what, 5 different, maybe not 5, 4 different of, like, the physical weaknesses that you can have, and a couple of the elemental ones as well. His big shout ability is nice in clearing out rooms, but not nearly as good as Lei's Sacred Dragon move, whatever it's called. Yeah, basically, once you get to the final chapter, Pogo is mostly just going to be there to 1, tank, and 2, to use Big Bang Boom. But the problem with Big Bang Boom is that it debuffs Pogo after using. And it isn't even the strongest ultimate move in the game, but it still debuffs him. And the worst thing is it debuffs his accuracy and his attack. So if you use it again, not only will you miss a bunch of hits, but you won't do as much damage. So Pogo is one of the best tanks in the game, but is he good enough to be an S plus tier? No. Add to that basically he only has 1 or maybe 2, maybe 3 abilities you'll be using in the final chapter. Big Bang Boom. His second to last ability is pretty nice as well because it has a decent range. And his Big Shout ability. Other than that, though, all of his other abilities are relegated to obscurity, and there's not really a point in using Pogo unless you're tanking or spamming Big Bang Boom. Alright, I don't think Pogo is one of the best. He is still a really good tank, and he is my... he's at the top of this tier. Like, he's still pretty dang good. Big Bang Boom is very powerful, but not good enough to put him in S plus tier. Alright, next we have Gori, the gorilla, who is going to be in B tier. Basically, like I said, B tier is you want them to progress, but you don't need them. Basically, B tier is a character that you basically need to kill a secret or optional boss. And basically, Gori is going to be at the top of B tier because without him, you have no chance against the Mammoth King, unless you get to like level 30 or something with Pogo. Because you're not going to be doing any damage if he keeps healing himself with his wind. Is it wind? Fire? Whatever. I think it's wind. Or water. Water? Water. That sounds right. Maybe? I don't know. Whatever those tiles are that he has. And if you don't use the Gori to change them into poison tiles, you're going to have no chance of killing the boss. So basically, unless you use those weird like thunder berries or whatever with Pogo. Like I said, he's not necessary to beat the Mammoth King, but he's basically necessary unless you grind forever. You already have to grind to beat him, but if you want to grind like 20 more levels, maybe you can beat him. And at that point, Pogo is just overpowered, and he's kind of boring to use if he's that overpowered. But anyway, Gori is basically a necessity for the Mammoth King boss, and that is why he's in B tier instead of C tier. Alright, next we have Beru, who is in C tier. Don't get me wrong, Beru is a much better character than Gori in terms of actual damage and healing abilities. Her Sing Hurt ability is insane. One of the best abilities in the game, actually. If you actually kept her in your party, it would probably be the strongest ability in the game. At level 6, it is able to do 800 damage if you hit the right enemy. 400 if not. If you could get her to like level 20 or something, she would be broken. She has healing too. If you could use Beru in the final chapter, I might have actually used her. But the problem is, you get her for a total of maybe like 20 minutes before you lose her, as well as during the final boss of the chapter. And since, yeah, you don't really get her for very long, and though she's very good, if you could use her for the Mammoth King fight, definitely would be above Gori, because you could just basically like two-shot the boss. But since you don't have her for very long, she will make the Odo Tyrannosaurus fight absolutely so easy. So that's good, I guess. But you really don't need to be that overpowered anyway. So overall, Beru is good, but not as good as Gori, because Gori can beat the Mammoth King. Next, we have Zaki, who's D tier, and the only D tier character on this list. You do not need Zaki if you leveled up Beru or Gori or Pogo at all. Then you will easily be able to beat Odo. It's fun to be able to have Zaki because he's the villain of the whole chapter, and it's fun that you actually get to use him in your party, so that's very fun. But since you only get him for one battle, and basically he only does like 50 damage when Beru can do 800 or 400 or whatever, there's not really a point. He's fun to use, and he has a lot of abilities, surprisingly, like a lot. Like, I wish you could use him for longer, because then you could actually make use of his abilities. But since he's only there for one battle, since he's weak, and since he's underleveled, Zaki is our one and only D tier character on this list. Alright, next we have the Shifu, who's going to be at the top of A tier, since without him you cannot beat the chapter. So the Shifu, though he is very weak in terms of health and defense, his evasion and is just absolutely insane. His abilities are fantastic, and he passes them on to his disciples, which is very good. Although the disciples will probably outdamage him by the end of the chapter, the Shifu is a very good character, and is stronger than all these other characters in A tier. His only downside really is his low HP, but that's not that big of a deal when he barely ever gets hit anyway. And yeah, the Shifu's very good, and his abilities are super cool. He has so many different abilities that he passes on to the disciples, and all of them have their uses in the final chapter, and that is why I love these characters. It's not like Pogo, where he only has like 3 good abilities in the final chapter. No, you have a lot of things. If you want to knock back enemies, Lion Dismissal. If you want to get away from enemies, whatever the monkey one is called, I can't remember what it's called. If you want to hit enemies around you, Wise Fox's Grace. If you want to hit enemies at a distance, Chipmunk's Delight. There's all these like abilities that you can use with the Shifu or with his disciples, and they're all very good. Shifu is the strongest character that'll be in the A tier, and you need him for a long time in the chapter to actually win the chapter Imperial China. So yeah, you should definitely use the Shifu, since you have to, unless you don't want to beat the game. Alright, let's move on to his disciples, who are going to be ranked higher than him, because I'm only putting people you can take to the final chapter in S and S+. And now we have Hong, who I'm actually going to put in S+ tier. A lot of people would disagree with that, but whatever. I don't care about that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I care about all your opinions, but I'm going to say what I think, not what pleases other people to hear. So I think that Hong is the best tank in the game. It's actually pretty easy to get him to max health, which is really hard to do with basically any other character, unless you want to get to like level 30. With Hong, you can get them like low 20s. You can get him to 999 health. He also has all the insane abilities of the Shifu, which makes him an amazing character. So he has 999 health, and he has the Shifu abilities. What holds him back? Obviously, I haven't put any other characters in the S+ tier, but spoiler, he's going to be the lowest on the S+ tier. Why is that? Because he is slow. So slow. He's like molasses. And although his health and his amazing abilities make up for it, I can't recommend him above the other 4 characters that I will be putting in the S+ tier. However, if you do choose him as your disciple, I think you should definitely have him in your party. If you don't choose him as your disciple, obviously you're not going to have him in your party. But I do think, since he's the best tank in the game, I think it would be a disgrace to my name if I put him anywhere except S+ tier. Alright, let's get on to Yun or Yoon, or I don't even remember how to pronounce his name. Honestly, I don't care about this guy that much. I think he's the worst of the 3 disciples. A lot of people would disagree. Oh, he has the best stats. Whatever. You can level up if you want good stats. Oh, but he's faster than Hong. Of course he's faster than Hong, but Hong also has like 3 times as much health as him. I think Yun is the worst person, the second worst person that you can use in the final chapter. Yes, his stats are good, but his abilities are not. His stats, other than HP, are good, but so are all these other characters. Like, he doesn't have a niche pick. He can't fill the tank role. He's just another damage dealer, and you don't need another damage dealer when you have people like Sundown, who are just better than him anyway. I would definitely not pick him as your disciple. Although some people do like him, he doesn't have Hong's tanking powers, and he doesn't have the speed and the AoE attacks of Lei. And speaking of Lei, I'm sick of talking about Yun. I'm going to put Lei right here in S+ tier. I'm not going to spoil where she is in S+ tier yet, but oh my goodness, Lei is definitely the best disciple. Why? Because of her Roaring Dragon ability, whatever it's called. It has a short recharge time. It does high damage to every enemy on the screen. Some attacks are like medium charge time and do high to one enemy, but no. This does high damage to everyone on the screen. It's way better than Pogo's Big Shout, and it is so good. Add to that she has all of the Shifu's other abilities, and she gets her own single target healing ability, which the only other character who gets a single target healing buffing ability is Masaru, who's a way worse character than Lei. Add all that together, as well as the insane ultimate ability of the Earthen, whatever it's called, Earthen Heart Shifu. You get that insane ability, and she can do huge single target damage without a charge time. So a short charge time to hit everyone with high damage and massive damage on one enemy at range. Plenty of ranged abilities, plenty of different options, no matter the situation. Lei is an amazing character. And Hong is very good, but I would always pick Lei. But I still think Hong is an S+ character, but definitely choose Lei. And leave Yun behind. He's not good at all compared to these two. He's still really good, but compared to these two, no, don't. Okay, next we have Oboro, or Oboromaru, if you would like to put his title or whatever. Not title, what's the word they use for, like, in Japan? The honorary thing. Yes, honorary title or whatever. Oboromaru. There we go. And sorry, I'm looking at my ranking down here. I have my huge whiteboard off to the side here. I'm putting him in 4th, right above Hong. Oboromaru is not quite as good at dealing damage as Sundown or Lei or some of these other characters, or yeah, even Pogo. But his speed makes up for it. His versatility makes up for it. He has like multiple different types of attacks, multiple elemental things. He's the only character, I think. Let me make sure. Let me think about this. Yeah, he's the only character who can create, other than Gori, which is not a final character, obviously. He's the only character that can put damage tiles on the ground, so that can be really useful. Yeah, and you definitely want to be using Oboromaru in your final party. He has high speed, he has elemental versatility, he has physical versatility, he has range, he has a lot of different things. And although he's not the strongest character, he also has decent HP, judging that he isn't a tank-like character. But yeah, he has a lot of things going for him. And although he's not really the strongest, his speed makes him so he can act twice as fast as other people, which usually makes up for his lack of insane damage. And if you have the right equipment on, he will have insane damage. Not as good as other people, but yeah, he can also instantly kill people, which I forgot to mention, and that is also very good. So with versatility, with damage tiles, with instant kills, with high speed, he's one of the better characters in the game. But I don't think he is like the best because his damage isn't as good as some of the other characters. Alright, let's move on. Oh my gosh, why are all these stupid Windows updates taking up half my screen? Okay, anyway, so next we have, no, I don't want the, this is why we can't have nice things. Oh my gosh, turn off notifications. There's like 12. Alright, no, I do not want to watch YouTube Shorts right now. I'm making a video. These notifications are just opening things. Alright, anyway. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, next we have the Prisoner, who is going to be right behind Gori in B tier. Basically, you need the Prisoner if you want to beat the 2 optional bosses in the Twilight of Edo Japan chapter. Sure, you can use Mimic Mammet, but that guy dies if he falls off of a pit. If he falls into a pit, he dies and you can never get him back. And I think that's stupid. I'll just rank him right now because I don't even want to talk about it. I'm just going to use this stupid square as him, and I'm going to put Mimic Mammet at the bottom of C tier. He's honestly bad. Anyway, the Mimic Mammet basically just dies and is super annoying. And yes, if you do avoid, and it's good if you're going for a pacifist run because it blows up those 3 soldiers, but seriously, I do not want to waste my time thinking about every time, like, I do not want to have that stress of falling in a pit and just losing one of my characters. Like, the Mimic Mammet is garbage. I like the Prisoner much better. His abilities aren't really that good, but the fact that you get a second character is much needed because basically I just used the Prisoner as a heal bot while Oboromaru was owning the fish or owning the Wandering Soul or whatever that guy's name was. The 2 bosses are much harder without a heal bot character, and I think that puts him in B tier, because without the Prisoner, it is much harder to actually beat the bosses. I needed him, I heal botted and debuffed the fish. I really needed the Prisoner for that battle. And for the Wandering Soul battle, or whatever it's called, I just used the Prisoner to tank like 3 attacks, and I let him die because he kind of sucks. And then I just finished him off with Oboromaru. So the Prisoner really helps in those 2 fights. And though some people might say the Mimic Mammet is better, I'd rather not take my chances with that piece of trash. Alright, let's move on to Sundown, who I think is S+. He's amazing. Yes, he's not very versatile. He has, like, 2 different types of attacks, wind and, like, his shots. But he's a ranged character. He does have low health. But he has huge range, and his hurricane ability is broken. Like, it can do 999 damage rather easily, or like at least 800. Even if someone's resistant to it, it'll still do 400 damage, which is better than most other characters. He's not very versatile, but his obscene damage it doesn't matter if they're resistant because it's still going to do a ton of damage. Yes, he is kind of situational because he isn't as versatile, but his huge damage makes up for it. His range makes up for it. His speed makes up for it. I think Sundown is one of the best. Some people might disagree, but I think his high damage. And even after getting nerfed, he's not as good as he was in the SNES version, which is hard to believe. But, yeah, it's hard to believe that he was even better. But yeah, it's pretty easy to hit like 800 damage with Sundown. And no other character can do that except for Pogo. But Pogo has short range, and also, on top of the short range, it debuffs him. But no, we get a long range, multi-target attack that does so much damage and has no downsides. Like, come on, Sundown's amazing. He doesn't have the versatility of Lei, and he can't just screen wipe everything. He can do a ton of damage to a couple of people or one single target, but he can't screen wipe, so I think Lei is better. And he has no healing abilities and doesn't have versatility, but his high damage puts him near the top of the list. Alright, next we have Mad Dog, who's going to be at the top of C tier. Why? Because without Mad Dog, it is a little bit hard to beat Odio. Not Odio, or Odo, or OD10. No, Odio. Odio is kind of hard because if you move to the wrong place once and get hit by Gatling gun, you're dead, no matter what. And without Mad Dog, the fight would be so much harder since you couldn't have someone to heal you up after you die. So if you didn't have Mad Dog in the fight against Odio, it would be much harder because you would only have Sundown and you could get one shot by Gatling gun, and then you have to start over like the whole cutscene. However, since Mad Dog is in your party, he's much better. I wouldn't say he's like required to kill the bosses like these two are, because those bosses are way harder than Odio, but still, you should definitely, like, Mad Dog is still the best character in the C tier because you kind of need him. Alright, Masaru is, I think, actually I'll talk about that in a second, but Masaru is going to be an S tier. And I'm going to say I think he's worse than Akira. Most people will say Akira is the worst of the final characters, but I'm going with Masaru on this. I'm just going to put Akira up here for now. I'll talk about him in a second. But Masaru it's just a worse version of the Disciple in my opinion in every single way. Except for HP. Let me be clear on that. However, Hong is better. Hong is a better version of Masaru. Pogo's almost basically a better version of Masaru. So yeah, I don't understand why you would put this piece of kind of garbage into your party. Not only is he the weakest character in my opinion, he also has my least favorite chapter. And although he's fine as a character, I don't really mind him as a character, and I liked his secret dungeon because it was the shortest and the least annoying of all of them. He just doesn't have that much going for him. Like, he has versatility, sure, but so does the Disciple, so does Oboromaru, and a lot of these other characters. And yes, he has a lot of health and a lot of strength, but he also has, like, the worst range of any character. Like, his best ranged ability is, like, I don't know, maybe his ultimate ability. I think there's one that, like, has, like, a diagonal, like, Fleetfoot, I think. Fleetfoot has okay range, I guess. Aloha Slap is alright range, and his ultimate ability is fine, I guess. But none of his abilities do enough damage to put him above any of these other characters. I really don't think Masaru's worth using, because by the time you've walked over to an enemy and try to beat him up with Masaru, you could have killed him ages ago with any of these other characters. I think he's kind of dumb. And I'm sad that he's dumb, because, like, he's supposed to be the greatest fighter on the planet. In a day and age where you can take steroids and become buff. But no, he's just a dumb kid with a headband that barely has any range and has versatility and was... Don't get me wrong, when I say he was my least favorite chapter, it was still a very fun chapter. Those fights were good, and he felt really powerful there. But another problem with him is he starts at level 2. So in the final chapter, you have to take, like, ages to grind up if you want him to be close to as good as the other characters, Whereas the second lowest character, Sundown, is at level 7. But level 7 and level 2 are very different. And yes, he catches up relatively fast. But by the time he gets like level 15, your other characters will be at level 20. Which is a huge difference in this game. So not only does he have bad range and mid abilities that are just worse than the Disciple, you also have to grind to make him okay. I would say his damage is also not even that good. His ultimate ability is by far the worst in the game. Because it has such a long recharge time, and it does less damage than... It does like the same amount of damage as her AoE ability, but it doesn't hit everybody. It's just not very good. Masaru is kind of sad. Hong and Pogo are much better tanks and much better damage dealers. I don't know why they gave Masaru the short end of the stick, especially since his story was already very lackluster, in my opinion. The fighting was fun, but there was no story in that chapter. And yes, it was a good homage to Street Fighter. But anyway, Masaru does not have good range, and he does not have anything that makes him better than the other two tanks in the game. So honestly, I think he is the worst character of the final permanent characters in Live Alive. Alright, now let's talk about Akira, who other people would be like, oh, this guy's the worst. Well, I don't agree. Why? Because of one simple thing. Formation. If you put Akira in your first slot, by the time you've gone with your other characters, he's going to be hitting a ton. He's going to be already charged up. Akira's biggest flaw is his speed. And everyone's like, oh, well, he's a worse healer than Robo. Don't think of him as a healer. Think of his healing as a backup thing. Think of him as a status ailment attacker and a elemental attacker. He is the best black mage in this game, and basically the only black mage in this game other than Streibough. But he has a lot of different elements, and he can do quite a bit of damage to a long AoE area. His biggest flaw is his speed, and that's the only reason I don't like him more than these other characters. His healing isn't that great, sure, but he isn't supposed to be a healer. I would say Cube is supposed to be a healer, and Akira is supposed to be like a red mage with healing, status effects, a couple of physical attacks, some buffing abilities, not many. Maybe just that one physical attack you can hit someone with and speed him up. But Akira's biggest flaw is his low stats. I don't think he's as bad as everyone says. He's a good black mage, and if you put him first in your formation, he'll have charged up by the time you've gotten around to it. And yes, Lei can do more with her AoE. Yes, Sundown does more damage, but honestly, and Pogo can do more damage to a single target, but Akira's probably the second best AoE damage dealer in the game. Oboromaru also has elemental attacks, but they aren't quite as powerful as Akira's. Of course, he's slow. That's the biggest downfall. I don't think he's as bad as other people say. Thinking of him as a healer is highly flawed in my opinion. Just because he has one healing ability doesn't mean he's a healer. Like, come on guys. Use his good magic abilities. Like, Judgment Day is actually a pretty powerful attack. Or what are some of his other ones? I can't remember what they're called, but he has a fire attack, ice attack. Like, he has two dark attacks, and one of them's actually pretty good. I don't think Akira's as bad as people say. Actually, I messed up. I'm putting him above Yun. I think he's pretty dang good. And yes, I don't think he's as good as Pogo, because Pogo's a tank and can do a ton of damage with Big Bang Boom. But I think people should give Akira a second chance. And he was buffed in this version as opposed to the SNES version. I think people have just had the wrong view on Akira, and I don't think he's an S+ character. I wouldn't use him in my final party, but I just wanted to tell people that he's not as bad as people think. Give him a chance, please. Alright, let's move on to Akira's robot friend, Taraimo. I can't remember his name, something like that. Taraimo something. He's one of the worst characters in the game. Kinda. No, he's in C tier. He's not this bad, but the only thing that makes him really good is that Akira originally, like in his chapter, he does suck. I will admit. His best ability, his most damaging ability is like that dark ability, if you can even get to that. I think I was at level 11 by the end of the chapter, so I don't even think I had his dark ability yet. I think my best ability with him was Mother's Shame, which is not a very good ability. It's a funny ability, not a very good ability. So for his chapter, I think he's actually better in the final chapter. Before his chapter, he really needs support from Taraimo and Lawless. And Lawless is right above, so I'll just put him above. These characters aren't that insane on their own, but since Akira is going to need a little bit of backup since he's not the strongest character out there, it's nice for these guys. And I think that Pogo is much better surviving on his own, so like Beru is not as big of not as important, but Lawless and Taraimo or whatever his name is really help Akira survive in his chapter. And though Akira is totally fine on his own in the final chapter, that's not really the case in the first chapters. So these guys are nice party members, but nothing way too special. Alright, let's move on to Cube, who is also in S+ tier. And I'm going to put him right here. Cube has the elemental variety of Oboromaru and Akira. So people are like, alright, better healing and the exact same elemental. I would say that Cube and Akira are basically both red mages. But think of Akira as like Leonora, who's mostly Leonora from Final Fantasy for the After Years. Think of like a black mage with a little bit of... Oh, I got that wrong. Oops. Think of Cube as Leonora. A white mage... How am I messing up this bad? A white mage with some black magic capabilities. And think of Akira as more of a... What's a good example? Maybe like a... I'm trying to think of a good example of this. A game where... Anyway, think of him more as a character that's focused on black magic, a little bit of white magic, and Cube the other way around. Since most people can deal damage and most people can't heal or buff, Cube is a necessity for your party, but I don't think that he's as, like, people say Akira's trash and Cube is like a god. I don't think there's that much of a gap between them as much as people say, especially since Cube can't really level up, and the only actual stats you can enhance are accuracy, evasion, and HP. So Cube honestly can't even take as many hits as Akira can. Well, kind of. Akira can get a lot more HP, but also Cube has more defense. So it's kind of the same there. But Cube is better because he has an AoE heal, like a buff, and he has a lot of elemental versatility. Oboromaru and Akira are much better like black mages, but he can still hold his own doing damage. Mostly, I would say heal with him and use his cannon ability. His cannon ability can do upwards of like 400, 500 single target damage. Whereas Akira can do like 300 damage in a certain range, the long charge time. He can do... what am I saying? Cube can do like 500 damage to a single target. I don't think there's as much of a gap between Akira and Cube as people say. I do still think Cube is a better character and it deserves S+ tier, as well as the slot is the third best party member in the game. But again, I'm still advocating for Akira. He's not as bad as people say. Anyway, enough about Akira and Cube, but yes, please use Cube. Alright, the worst character in the game by far is Captain Square. He's an F tier. This is not Captain Square. That's not what he looks like. But I'm just using that as a placeholder for Captain Square. You don't even need to use him. He's part of a little video game that you can play inside of a video game. And yes, he has plot relevance, kind of. His game has plot relevance, not even him. It's fun if you're kind of bored of just walking around the spaceship, which you shouldn't be because the Distant Future chapter is amazing. But if you're a little bit bored, it's nice to go play some Captain Square, fight some battles. But he has no reason to actually use him except for fun and leisure. He's not actually like a good character that will help you beat bosses or anything. So honestly, Captain Square is kind of terrible. Alright, let's move on to Oersted, who I'm putting in S tier. Why? Because technically he's the leader of one of the chapters. You need him to beat the chapter. And because he's part of a final chapter. Though I could argue that he could go with the Shifu since they're basically like the same role. You have Oersted for a bit longer. He's a bit stronger than the Shifu. And he is in a final chapter, even if you don't really control him. Oersted, you have Also, the Shifu, a lot of the chapter, you have a disciple with you, whereas Oersted, you have a good, 70% of the chapter, where you literally only are Oersted. And he has some really dang good abilities. He inherits a lot of the abilities from the hero, Hasshe, and yeah, he has a lot of good abilities. He's very strong, and if he wasn't the final boss of the game, I would be very glad to have him in my final party, and I would probably put him in S+ tier, probably above Oboromaru, if he actually was one of the 8 that you end with or whatever. However, 7 you end with, sorry. But obviously, we all know what happens with him. He's not really a final chapter character because his final chapter is just played by these guys. However, Oersted is still a very good character. And since he is one of the main chapter characters, I'm going to put him in S tier. Alright, next we have Streibough. The only, true black mage in this game. Akira, I would say, is a black mage, but he's more of a red mage. The only true black mage in this game is Streibough. And he is bottom of C tier, in my opinion. He's the worst character of the 4 characters you get in the Medieval Ages chapter. He takes way too long to charge up. And he's mostly only a single target attacker. I think he's definitely worse than Akira. And he's a a-hole when it comes to the story. I would literally... If I could murder this guy in real life, I probably would have. This guy ruined so many people's lives. He deserved to die. But anyway, he sucks. I mean, in terms of how good the story is, his villainous actions lead to some of the best story in the entire game. But he's still an a-hole. He's a B, whatever the heck you want to call him. He's stupid, and he's not even that good in battle. I'm glad he died. And yeah, I mean, sure, he has some black magic, but none of it's really good enough to put him anywhere higher than the bottom of C tier. Still better than Zaki, obviously, since you have him for quite a few battles, but you don't really need him, because you have better characters anyway. Alright, next we have Uranus, who I'm putting above, right above Streibough, near the bottom. I actually really like this dude. He's a good character. I'm sad he died because of Streibough being a piece of garbage. But Uranus is just a white mage healer dude. And although I think he's more important than Streibough, because Streibough doesn't do any damage against the Dark Lord, whereas Uranus, you kind of need some healing for the Dark Lord fight. However, you don't really need healing for, any of this chapter except for that one boss fight. So really... he is pretty obscure. You don't really need him. So, yeah. And then Hasshe, the hero. The only point of him is that he can beat up that one boss. But that makes him better than a lot of these other characters. Because without him, it's a lot harder to beat the Dark Lord. So I'm going to put him right here. Not as good as these 3 because you don't necessarily need him. Because with Uranus's healing, you have a good chance of beating the boss. But still... he decimates the Dark Lord, and that makes him a pretty good character. Alright, I'm not using these other 5 squares because they don't have anything going for them. Obviously, I just use these 2 as placeholders for the Mimic Mammet and for Captain Square. Anyway, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tier list. I have not seen anybody make one of these on the internet, which is really surprising to me. But hopefully this gave you some insight into the characters of Live Alive. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and check out the channel for more Live Alive videos. The chapter ranking will be coming in a couple of days, and I hope you enjoyed. This is one of my favorite games now. Not as good as, Octopath Traveler. I still think Octopath Traveler is better, but this is one of my favorite games now. It's very unique. It has an undeniable charm, and I hope you enjoy this game as much as I did. Thank you guys all for watching. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, RPG nerds.